Hello and welcome back to the unit tutorial for Science Year 6, Unit 3, Evolution and Inheritance, and this is video part 2. This video will walk you through the following areas: how to adapt activities and lessons, and key moments within the unit to look out for. Adapting activities can be easily done by using the ebook workbook and the snipping tool to paste the activity onto a Word or Publisher document and edit it. From there, you can print it and stick the adapted activity into your exercise book or directly over the workbook original activity. You may be familiar with the snip tool, but it can be found by searching in the search bar or simultaneously pressing Windows, Shift and S. Drag your mouse to highlight the area you want to copy, and that selection of your screen can be copied onto your clipboard and then onto your Word or Publisher document. Now I'm going to talk you through how you can adapt activities in the pupil workbook. We don't have time to go through every activity in this unit, so I've selected one or two from each lesson. The adaptations we look at here are suggestions, and you should use what works best for your pupils, but hopefully this is a useful starting point for you and will start a bank of adaptation ideas. In Lesson 1, pupils have to read a text and then answer questions based on that text. Support pupils by highlighting the key information, by highlighting the keywords in the question, by adding empty label boxes to guide pupils, and stretch pupils by asking them if they know the names of any extinct animals and what happened to them. In Lesson 2, pupils need to undertake an investigation where they look at variation within humans. Support pupils by selecting in advance the characteristics pupils will use. Add the table for data in advance. Create the bar chart. And stretch pupils by asking them to write a definition for variation. In Lesson 3, pupils will need to complete 4 right questions. You can support pupils by printing the images of each breed of dog pupils to examine closely. On this printout, you could add arrows to the characteristics you want to draw pupils' attention to, and stretch pupils by asking them to explain the difference between physical and behavioural characteristics. In Lesson 4, pupils need to write out how the animals in the pictures adapted to their different environments. Support pupils by creating answer boxes and printing them off for pupils to sort and stick in. You could complete the first example. You could add the labels in advance to each image. You could add keywords pupils to use in their explanation. Or you could create a short fact file of a couple of sentences for each animal. Stretch pupils by asking them to think of an animal you haven't studied that lesson and explain how it survives in its habitat. In Lesson 5, pupils need to write out the answer to the question, how are these organisms adapted to help them survive? Support pupils by creating answer boxes, print them off for pupils to sort and stick in. You could complete the first one as an example. You could add the labels in advance to each image, add keywords for pupils to use in their explanation, and create a short fact file of a couple of sentences for each animal. You could also give some keywords to inspire pupils on how their made-up animal may have adapted. Stretch pupils by showing them an animal, like a chameleon or a mountain goat, and ask how that animal is adapted to survive in their environment. In Lesson 6, pupils need to read text and then answer questions based on that text. Support pupils by highlighting the key information in the text and by highlighting the key information in the questions. For extra support, you could colour code the sentence with the key information in to the relevant question so pupils are guided on where to look. Stretch pupils by using a different example of 2 variations of an animal and ask which one is better suited to their environment and why. In Lesson 7, you will come across a whole page of text. Support pupils by highlighting the key information, but you could also print out the slides with enlarged text to use as handouts. For pupils with dyslexia, Avoid printing dark text on a white background and try dark blue text on an off-white or pale yellow background instead. Stretch pupils by asking them to write a summary of what they've read. In Lesson 8, pupils need to undertake an investigation by answering the question, which beak is the best? Support pupils by adding sentence starters and by giving pupils a multiple choice option to answer. Stretch pupils by asking them what might happen to the birds with beaks that are less suited to their environments. In Lesson 9, pupils will need to read a text based on the dodo and answer 3 retrieval questions. Support them by highlighting the key information in the text and the key information in the questions. Again, you could print the slides with enlarged text to use as handouts. And again, for pupils with dyslexia, avoid printing dark text on a white background and try dark blue text on an off-white or pale yellow background instead. You could also give pupils sentence starters or multiple choice options. Stretch pupils by asking them to answer questions such as, David says that the dodo will increase in numbers again if we make sure their eggs are protected. Is David correct and why? In Lesson 10, pupils need to answer 3 retrieval questions and a right question. For these questions, the text isn't in the workbook, so you could print the text from the slides and give to pupils as a handout. You could highlight the key information in the text for further support. You could give pupils multiple choice answers, and you can draw the outline for the food chain for pupils to fill in. You could also start off the food chain for pupils. Stretch them by asking them to create their own questions and answers from the text. If time, they could test the class or their partner. Besides reading through the unit resources before you begin teaching, for every unit there are elements that will need to be planned in advance by the class teacher. You could plan an engaging hook, look at a model, create some art, or watch a video to get pupils excited for the learning to come. You'll need to print off any additional resources. Not every lesson will have these, so make sure you check before you teach. And you may need to gather resources for specific lessons, such as lessons and investigations, and check for this using the unit planning guide. Hopefully you now feel confident about accessing and teaching this unit. Any questions, please send to primarymastery@curriculumplus.org.uk, and we welcome all feedback to ensure that these resources are as supportive as possible for you and your pupils.